a king was traveling with his child through the wilderness. And when a king travels, his entire entourage travels along. Ministers and guards and attendants and servants, all at the ready to serve their master and to carry out his will. Suddenly, the procession ground to a halt. The king's child had a request. "Water," said the crown prince. "I want water." So the king convened his cabinet to address the crisis. "My son is thirsty," he said to his ministers, "but how is water supposed to be obtained in the wilderness?" After much deliberation, 2 proposals were laid before the throne. "I shall dispatch my 10 ablest horsemen on my 10 fastest steeds," proposed the commander of the royal cavalry. "They will ride to the nearest settlement and fill their water skins. Within the hour, there will be water for the prince." "I shall put my men and equipment to the task," proposed the chief of the Royal Engineering Corps. "They will erect a derrick and sink a well right here, on this very spot at which we have stopped. Before the day is out, there will be water for the prince." So the king thought for a moment, and then he decided to go with the latter proposal. And soon the royal engineers were boring a well through the desert sand and rock. Toward evening, they reached a vein of water, and the prince's thirst was quenched. But then they had a conversation, the prince and his father. "Why?" asked the prince of his father after he had drunk his fill. "Did you trouble your men to dig a well in the desert? After all, we have the means to obtain water far more quickly and easily." "Indeed, my son," replied the king, "such is our situation today. But perhaps one day, many years in the future, you will again be traveling this way. Perhaps you will be alone, without the power and privilege that you now enjoy. Then the well we dug today will be here to quench your thirst." "But father," said the prince, "in many years the sands of time will have refilled the well, stopping its water and erasing its very memory." "My son," said the king, "you have spoken with wisdom and with foresight. This is what we're going to do. We will mark the site of this well on our maps and preserve our maps from the ravages of time. If you know the exact spot at which this well has been sunk, you will be able to reopen it with a minimum of effort and toil. This we shall do at every single encampment of our journey. We shall dig wells and mark their places on our maps. We shall record the particular characteristics of each well and the method by which it can be reopened. So whenever and under whatever circumstances you will travel this route, you will be able to obtain the water that will sustain you on this journey." Now this story, transmitted to us through the Mara Yehezkel, who was the founder of Dates Hasidism in the 18th century, has been passed down through generation and generation to be taught specifically in reference to our Parashat this morning, specifically in reference to Parashat Emor. And if we have a background in the allegorical nature of Hasidic stories, then we can figure this one out pretty quickly. Almost always when the Hasidim use a king in their storytelling, the king represents God. And if God is the king, then the children of the king, or the workers or the servants of the king, represent us, the Jewish people. And since this story is used specifically in regard to Parashat Emor, we can therefore assume that the map being referenced here is the map of the Jewish calendar. That with the Parashat's references to the Omer, to Rosh Hashanah, to Shavuot, to Sukkot, to Pesach, and Yom Kippur, that we have the wells, as they were, marked within our annual cycle of holidays and celebrations to mark the sources of spiritual water, that is Torah, that will nourish us and sustain us. But if we dig a little bit deeper, there's something more serious being addressed here, more urgent. And it's addressed by the king's son after hearing his father's plan. Because remember, it is the king who says that there will perhaps come a day when the child won't have his father, won't have the privilege of his position, and won't have the standard markers leading the way along his journey. So if we remember, the son says to his father, "Father, in many years the sands of time will refill the wells, stopping its water and erasing their very memory." With this one sentence, the whole parable changes from a cute allegory concerned with the proper marking of the Jewish year to an existential question of Jewish survival. The question is not, as we might imagine on the Parashat level or on the superficial level, a question of keeping the holidays in the correct way and on the correct dates so that we can access the life of Torah that comes with those marked occasions, but rather finding any and all ways to preserve the spiritual and historical location of Torah, because there will come a day when the wells are forgotten and lost to the sands of time. We are living at a remarkable time in Jewish history. Despite the shocking rise of anti-Semitism over the last few years, Jews have never known the type of freedom, acceptance, and tolerance that we experience today in America. Despite our small numbers, our culture has become part of mainstream America. It's hard to find non-Jews who haven't been to a Pesach Seder, who don't have a favorite restaurant or cafe to get some good challah French toast or shakshuka. And just the other night I heard on the evening news that good Irish Catholic news anchor used more than one Yiddish phrase with shockingly decent pronunciation. But, listen, I'm a rabbi, there's always going to be a but. While Jewish culture and Jewish peoplehood thrive in a way they never have before, I can't help but notice a troubling trend in our journey. Not that we are losing track of the maps or the location of our wells of Torah, but even more alarming, that we are not even realizing how thirsty we are. And instead of vocalizing our need for spiritual sustenance, we are walking through the desert with our water bottles leaking, but yet somehow unconcerned. And maybe we're unconcerned because it's easier to chalk up any issues or challenges to something or someone else. And so we blame our birth rates, we blame intermarriage and the pull of American materialism, and we blame progressive Judaism for not being authentic enough, for preaching too much feel-goodery rather than Torah. But somewhere within all of this is a painful truth that we have prioritized the Chaim Tovim, the Dolce Vita, the sweet life of being like everyone else, and have lost track of what truly drives us as a people. Now, please don't misunderstand me. This isn't about a good classic helping of Jewish guilt. It's not about blame or disappointment. My challenge to all of us, myself included, this morning comes from a desire and a knowledge that Judaism and life with Judaism, with its layers of depth and meaning, with its beautiful rituals and traditions, and with its thoughtful exercises of philosophy, mysticism, and mindfulness, isn't a good idea in theory. It truly makes our lives better. It makes our families closer. It makes our marriages stronger. It gives our children security and understanding at times when the rest of their lives seem like unknowable chaos. It sharpens our minds. And it opens our hearts to be better people, to be givers of charity, of time and energy for the sake of filling this world with light rather than with darkness. And it truly keeps us alive. It does. It preserves us. It gives us life. Not just as individuals, it keeps our people alive. But in order for us to live Torah, we have to be thirsty for it. We have to want to find the wells of meaning that exist within our traditions so that we can nourish our souls, our family, and our community. And so I want to offer us a challenge this morning, one in which I hope that we all will participate. I want to challenge us to take the rest of Shabbat and to plan a way to mark the wells in a way that we currently aren't in our Jewish lives. Maybe that means coming to one extra daily minyan during the week. Maybe it means learning how to lead a Shiva minyan, or one of the daily prayer services. Maybe it means signing up to read Torah or Haftorah, or maybe it means reaching out and finding a chavruta, a study partner, to learn with once a week and to dig into the seas of Torah. Whatever it might be, I want to challenge you not only to make a commitment to yourself, but to let the rest of this community help you in whatever way we can. Because both Rabbi Starr and I have given this sermon in one formulation or another before. But I want to make sure that we don't let the message fall by the wayside. So here's what I'm proposing. Yesterday, before Shabbat started, I started a Facebook group for anyone who is interested called Torah Maps. It's nothing fancy, no bells or whistles, just a group for our CSC family to come together and support one another with our Jewish journeys. It's closed, private, and confidential, and it's a place to simply ask some challenging questions, to find a study partner, to find a place for Shabbat dinner, and to share with the rest of the Kahal the different ways you're trying to deepen your Judaism, your Jewish life. And I know this isn't everyone's cup of tea, and trust me, I applaud each and every one of us for trying to push ourselves and challenge us. But for those who could benefit from sharing that motivation within our synagogue family, I'll ask that you just simply find the Facebook page after Shabbat or send me a message and I'll make sure that you get welcomed in. And then I'll ask you to feel free to start the conversation with one another and to start by sharing your goal, the goal that you set for yourself this day. That we can start working on this together. And that's it. It might sound small, it might sound silly, but I don't think it is. I think that our wells are incredibly powerful, incredibly meaningful, and have the ability to give us an appreciation of life, of one another, and an appreciation of ourselves that is truly limitless. And I think this congregational family is also incredibly powerful and filled with good hearts and a passion for Torah that can be a great tool or resource for us all. So whether you choose to use this group or not, my blessing for all of us on the Shabbat of Emor, the Shabbat of Maps, is that we might harness the wisdom and the urgency to understand just how thirsty we are, and that we might challenge ourselves to dig up the wells of our tradition with the help of one another, that we might learn with one another, that we might grow with one another, and that we might make those wells so flourishing that there will be no question where they are, for us, for our children, for our children's children, and please God for many generations to come. Shabbat Shalom.